Hey, this is D Knight.
This is Ty.
And Carol's gone. And so is Tara, but I'm sure we'll eventually all get together at once sometime in the near future. But until then, you're listening to the Part of the Insurrection podcast with just two hosts today. I know every time I cut this microphone on, we start this podcast, and I give you my rant about how absolutely bonkers and insane the news is. And I'm not going to lie to you, it's not any different today. But before we get to that, I'll give a quick shout out to our sponsor, Sheets and Giggles. Of course, as you're well aware by this point, this is a Sheets and Giggles podcast. It's the only thing we sleep on. And then I hope, should say Trump win the 2024 election and we end up in concentration camps, the Sheets and Giggles becomes the official sponsor of the United States concentration camps. Because, the least they can do is make sure that we can sleep well at night in our individual prisons. Because those sheets are so soft. Again, it's been one of those weeks, and I think I tweeted on Monday something to kind of sum it up. This is like a single sentence, so just to give you an idea of the state of affairs. In case you're wondering how we're going to try and wrap our minds around this and get you a podcast, I just want you to see the level of the degree of difficulty that we're dealing with here. Like the ability to juggle this nonsense, you're going to discover the level of insanity I'm referring to momentarily. Here you go. So Trump is handing over $90 million bonds in a rape defamation case as witnesses at Mar-a-Lago are going public about him committing espionage, as his cabinet officials are publicizing his love of Hitler, as he's bankrupting the RNC, as he's 2 weeks away from going on trial for trying to cheat in the 2016 election. And also, he has to come up with nearly $500 million on the same day as his trial, as he's being sued by his business partners and his social media company, as Scotland is suing him for the same kind of fraud that he engaged in New York, as he's meeting with foreign authoritarians, and I almost did the Trump and said authoritarianism, foreign authoritarians at Mar-a-Lago, where he was keeping the classified documents that he was caught on camera moving onto a plane while his lawyers were meeting with the FBI before he flew the documents off to New Jersey, where he buried his wife on a golf course.
Oh, Jesus. I mean, we know all these things. We follow them in real time, but just hearing it.
Yeah, when you put it into a sentence like that, it's like, oh, that actually is insane. And I see why numerous people that we are friends with on the internets resort to consuming copious amounts of marijuana to cope. Yeah, so I don't even know where to start, really. We've got a handful of topics to cover. We're probably not going to get to them all. I know I say this all the time. I'm like, yeah, well, we don't have time for that. We'll get to it next week. And then next week never comes because there's, incessant insanity that just pushes the old stuff. Like, for instance, the Hunter Biden impeachment fiasco, where their star witness has been indicted by the special counsel who is investigating Hunter Biden because their star witness is a Russian asset, and, he was feeding Russian misinformation to the FBI. And we don't even have time. Can't even discuss that in detail because there's just endless amounts of tomfoolery and shenanigans and all right. So, yesterday, Trump and Biden clinched their respective nominations, although Trump ended up losing a significant number of his voters to Nikki Haley, who is no longer in the race. Now, Ty,
that is not to hurt.
Right. Now, so my favorite media take on all of this is when when Biden was getting 80-something% in Michigan the other day because what was it, like 100,000 people, maybe
the uncommitted.
Yeah, there was a proportion of the vote. I think it was around 16 or 18% that ended up voting uncommitted in Michigan. And the media was like, oh, this uncommitted vote spells doom for Biden. And then Trump loses more votes to Nikki Haley yesterday. And the media is like, oh, it's no big deal.
Trump won.
Yeah, he won,
Like,
ran away with it, sealed up the nomination. But they didn't talk about, like, in the context of Biden outperforming how he was polling in Michigan and the way Trump is underperforming the polls. The media refuses to cover that. And it's one of the things that's going to lead to another January 6th that the media won't, like, accurately, or at least if the slant that they're going to take on it is that Trump is, like, dominating. The fact that Biden is doing even better, like far better than Trump, that they won't tell the public that when an election comes in November and Biden wins, Republicans is going to be mad, yo. They're going to be so mad.
Because they're giving the impression that Trump is just crushing it when he's not. I mean, and the same can be said, like, when in the Iowa caucus.
Yeah, the caucuses. Yeah.
Yeah. But it was like out of 700 and something thousand, only 100 something thousand voted, and only 53 of those thousand voted for Trump. So when you break it down like that, but they made it like, oh, Trump runs away with Iowa. They made it like he just got every vote of everybody, every person. And so they are creating this atmosphere that, oh, well, there's no way he could lose because Trump is crushing him.
Yeah.
Biden, there's no way Biden can beat him. Yeah, Trump has got this. They are, you're right. They're setting it up.
They're creating a narrative. And so I don't know how many of you follow Decoding Fox News on Twitter.
Love her.
She's so good. Yeah, like if you have the opportunity, make sure you check out her Substack. I'm not affiliated with her in any shape, form, or fashion. This is just me telling you she does really good work. But you can also listen to her podcast. But one of the things she did after Super Tuesday is, like, she added up the actual, and I talked about this on Spoutable on Super Tuesday with Christopher Boozy, the CEO. Yeah, I'm name dropping. Yes, it's also a lame name drop. But so, like, one of the things she did was she added up, like, the actual vote, like the total amount of votes in each of the primaries in all of the states, like not averages of each state, but like the actual number of voters who turned in a vote in the Republican primary and in the Democratic primary. And then she divided those by the number of votes the number of votes cast for anyone not named Trump in the Republican Party and not named Biden in the Democratic Party, to see who got the higher share of votes in each of their respective primaries. And I think Trump got somewhere around, well, he was in the low 70s in terms of percentage of the vote, and Biden was in the mid 80s. So I think it was like a 12, 13 point difference. And if you just look at that number, like the fact that Trump can barely get to 70% of the vote in his own party when he's practically the incumbent, it just highlights how weak of a candidate he is. That he can't crack the 80s is wild. It's just, and like the media doesn't talk about this shit. They're just like, oh, Trump dominated and Biden flails, even though it drives me crazy. But hey,
it's even more stark because Trump's base is rabid. You know what I'm saying? MAGA is so in lockstep, and the Republican Party has just been, all like in line with each other.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Like, that's the way things are portrayed. But when you look at the actual numbers, it's not totally true. At least not when it comes to actual voters. But again, we've got so much to get to that we can't dwell on this nonsense. But, just obviously we're at go time. 0 dark 30, like it's Trump v. Biden. And now that it's official, I assume that over the course of the next month or two, the rest of the country, they're going to take off their goggles, their hopium goggles, where they're hoping for some other candidates, and, adjust to reality and decide that, like, hey, if we got to pick one, let's not go with the insane person who's facing numerous indictments. Fewer than 91 now, thanks to some unforeseen circumstances, but we'll get to that, hopefully. But yeah, just, expect the fact that it's now official, the Trump and Biden are your two candidates, that is going to reflect in the polling that people are going to have, because people are going to have to make up their mind. They can't just wish cast a new candidate. So obviously, and we're recording this on Wednesday. So yesterday, Rob Hur, the special counsel charged with investigating President Biden's potential mishandling of classified documents, testified before the House Judiciary Committee for a few hours, revealing a number of discrepancies between his report and the transcript of his interview with Joe Biden. Ty, did you happen to get to catch up on some of that?
I watched some of it, but I read the transcript. But I did that earlier in the morning. And I, watched him get his ass handed to him by Schiff. And I can't remember her name, the other representative. Who he was like, and she was like, page 86. He was flipping through like he needed to read it.
Yeah. Okay. So I also, yes, she was asking him about specifically in his report where he was saying that President Biden didn't remember the date of his son Bo's death. And then it turns out actually in reality in the transcript that Biden clearly remembered the month and the day of his death specifically and pointed it out. And then, well, I mean, it's just proof that Hur lied in his report. And the fact that, we let these conservative clowns in these positions of authority do these hit jobs on Democratic elected officials it's insane. And if you're wondering where Hur came from, he's a holdover. He's one of the few DOJ holdovers from the Trump administration. He was actually like Rod Rosenstein's assistant. And I don't know if we had the opportunity much to talk about how I feel about Rod Rosenstein on his podcast, but he's actually like, if they're, apart from Trump and, well, okay, there's a lot of people, but apart from Trump and maybe Mitch McConnell refusing to just, force 10 senators to draw straws and then convict Trump in his impeachment trial, the one person largely responsible for the state of affairs we're in, where Trump is just running rampant over the law, is Rod Rosenstein, because he is the one who, well, he did a lot of fucked up shit, but largely in his role as deputy AG, where he oversaw Robert Mueller's investigation, he is the one who directly limited the scope of the investigation, keeping Mueller's investigation out of the reach of Trump's finances, which, as we now know, Trump was committing numerous acts of financial fraud, and Mueller probably would have hammered it on that, and likely, I don't know. I mean, I guess you can't indict him while he was in office, but it probably would have been enough to get him impeached and removed at the time. And there's a lot of other fucked up shit Rod Rosenstein was responsible for, but that's the kind of guy that Rob Hur was working for and the kind of operation that Hur was involved in. So shady dude. I think that came across in the hearings. And one of my favorite parts of the hearing, it doesn't really even have anything to do with calling out Hur's behavior and including unnecessary salacious details that happened to be false in his report. But it was Eric Swalwell playing that clip of, he was talking about how Hur's representation of Biden's mental acuity was totally wrong. And then he was like, instead, let's play for you a clip of this other individual. And it was Trump, and he was losing his mind. His brain was melting. He was saying all kind of insane shit. Yeah. My favorite part of that is that the last clip of the video is when Trump was talking about his trip to Puerto Rico, where he met the president of the Virgin Islands.
Is that correct? The word photographic?
That does not appear in my report.
I now want to show you and play a video of what is absolutely not photographic.
In the failing New York Times by an anonymous, really an anonymous, gutless coward. We are a nation that just recently heard that Saudi Arabia and Russia will repeat. I hope they now go and take a look at the oranges of the investigation. And I watch our police and our firemen down on 7-Eleven, down at the World Trade Center. And we did with Obama. We won an election that everyone said couldn't be won. This is the very definition of totalitarianism. And let me begin by wishing you a beautiful, look, you remember this? Do you remember? God bless the United States. The windmills are driving them crazy. They're driving
I'm the gentleman.
The whales, I think, a little batty. And I went to Puerto Rico and I met with the president of the
Ty, the president of the Virgin Islands, is the president of the United States.
Yes. Oh, Lord.
All right, let me tell you why I love that so much, though. Because what was funny is, like, her facial expression didn't really change much after watching that video, but it took him a minute to gather himself to try and answer some questions after that. So he was clearly not pleased with that. Yeah. But what was really funny is Fox News was carrying the hearing live. And then that might be the first time Fox News' audience has ever actually seen Donald Trump, totally incoherent and incompetent. So that was an awesome move by Eric Swalwell.
In all fairness to Trump, I'm pretty sure that there are plenty in his audience who think that there is another president of the Virgin Islands. Completely, we are giving them a little too much. While we're sitting, we're thinking this had to be a light bulb moment. This had to be a light bulb moment. I mean, we are talking about people who don't think that Puerto Rico is a part of the U.S.
Ty, it's called the U.S. Virgin Islands. You know why? Because it's a part of the U.S.
Look, it's too much like right. I know it sounds
okay.
It's indisputable.
Yeah, okay.
But when it comes to MAGA, one thing I've learned, if they can dispute it, they will dispute it regardless.
Okay, that's totally fair. But yeah, if you didn't have the opportunity to watch the hearing, at least go check out some highlights on the YouTube or something. Like, obviously, I'm so sorry that there's like endless amounts of news and we just don't have time to cover everything in depth. But yeah, it's worthwhile if you have the opportunity to read the report, to scroll through some of both the highlights of the transcript, which was released the same day as her testimony, which is a wild, like, I wish I could understand who made the decision with the timing there. I don't even think, and this is, again, I'm going off of the tangent here real quick, but I don't even think Merrick Garland had the opportunity to even read this report. And that's why her was able to slip all this bullshit in here. Cause I think the timing of it, the release of it was quite suspicious, because I think Merrick Garland had back surgery on the Friday and he was out for a few days, and her sent his report to the DOJ on Sunday or something like that. Or maybe, you'll have to look at the dates, but it was the very end of February where Merrick Garland was out for back surgery. And he had transferred authority to his deputy. So, she was acting AG. And then her sent in his report like 2 or 3 days later, the first day or two of March. So yeah, I think her engaged in some shenanigans. Someone's going to have to fact check that for me. I'm sorry. We gotta keep this moving, or it'll be like, 4:00 in the morning here. And your boy is already struggling after this daylight savings time change thing. So yeah,
me too. It takes me a minute.
Oh my God.
Tied up when daylight savings time happens. And then I was at work and I'm sitting and I'm like, and that fucks me up. because then I'm off. You know, it's late. It's like 6 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, it is. It's getting me too. Like, I was trying to figure out what the fuck was wrong with me, and I was like, oh yeah, the time changed. Anyway, so we've got some semi-breaking news. As the Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics, that's CREW, they received a number of revealing text messages from Department of Homeland Safety officials from January 5th and January 6th.
Share them or just announcing that they had them? So
they posted the article on their website. You know, you just check that out. Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics. It's not hard to find. So the article reads as internal text messages from the Federal Protective Service obtained by CREW give a never before seen look at how senior government law enforcement officials prepared for and responded to the insurrection on January 6th. Much like the FBI and Secret Service, FPS, a component of the Department of Homeland Security, had advance warning that there could be a disturbance at the Capitol. On January 3rd, then Principal Deputy Director and current Deputy Director of the FPS, Chris Klein, received a text notifying him that, quote, there will be marches to the Capitol that will likely use the mall as their route. And as Trump's mob swarmed downtown D.C. on January 5th, Tex Ailes, Deputy Undersecretary for Management of DHS, texted Klein and Chris Tomney, the Director of Office of Homeland Security Situational Awareness, that he was, quote, glad D.C. has strict gun control. Tomney responded with one word, yikes. And you just keep going through this, and there's a lot of information about specific texts between these guys saying, hey, it's fucking crazy. Watch your back. You watching this shit. It's crazy. Thousands of people in the streets. Do your best. It's a lot going on in here. Of course, they talk about they had officials were also notified of intelligence suggesting that the Proud Boys might storm the Capitol building, or rather the FBI building, at 2:00 on the afternoon of January 6th. And other officials were overwhelmed by the crowd over the course of the day. And it's a lot going on there. Make sure you check that article out. I mean, it gives insight into the fact that, like, while we were all sitting there on January 6th, like, how the fuck was nobody prepared for this? It's not that they didn't have the opportunity to prepare. There was plenty of information ahead of time, and they were all aware that some crazy shit might go down. It just seems that no one with decision-making powers chose to take those warnings, or at least heed those warnings and take them seriously, and put people in a position to make sure something like that attack on the Capitol didn't happen. It's not great news, Ty.
No, and it's also like that in conjunction with reports that had come out that Secret Service, or with the Secret Service or the FBI, had credible intel that Nancy Pelosi's life was in danger. And they did not tell her or warn her. And this was a couple of days before, until like a few hours before the whole insurrection went down.
Yeah, I think they officially notified her that there were threats on her life in the middle of the fucking coup, Ty. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying, like, credible that they held on to for days. Yeah. And made no mention.
I mean, look, it's pretty obvious what happened here. Trump's the president. He's got control over all these levers of, federal agencies and whatnot responsible for protecting the Capitol, and especially at a joint session of Congress, where you would assume that, like, you would have the highest possible level of security. It was the lowest possible level of security. And that's largely because Trump, used his authority as president to tell official law enforcement to lay off, while sending his own private army to attack the Capitol in the coup. That's what happened. Like, I mean, it's pretty fucking straightforward. Now, I don't know if the guys on the ground specifically had any involvement in that or whatnot, or, you know, whether they were just ill prepared and basically put in a position to fail. I don't know.
Well, I mean, none of this is shocking, especially after the January 6th hearings, and especially after they were sharing the texts and things going on between the agents and stuff like that, the Secret Service.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised, but still hearing it and realizing just how infiltrated, you know, loyalists and people willing to, you know, even though they did not blatantly go out and storm the Capitol, they did little things and delay tactics and you know, stuff like they were not taking their job seriously.
No. And then we don't even have time to get to this, but there's also a House hearing on the individual who placed those pipe bombs at the DNC and RNC the night before. I mean,
Marjorie?
Okay, so I obviously don't know it to be Marjorie Taylor Greene, but yes, you can look at some of the video clips, and I think one of the conclusions you can come to, I mean, and let's not just, you know, it maybe don't make assumptions, but it's entirely possible that the individual who placed those pipe bombs, which were, according to the hearing, fully functional, don't necessarily know if they would have went off per se, but they were fully functional pipe bombs. Like, you know, if someone had a detonator, they could have exploded. That individual has the gait of what appears to be a woman. So I'm not saying it's Marjorie Taylor Greene, but I would say, given the locations of the pipe bombs, it was probably someone who was either intimately familiar with the layout of these political locations, like the fact that they knew exactly where to place the bombs, where they wouldn't be found at night, but would eventually be found. It suggests that it was a DC insider who either did it or instructed them to do it. And then two, I think security for the RNC found the bombs and notified Capitol Police right as the coup was starting, which appears to be impeccably timed for creating the most amount of distraction and drawing Capitol Police officers away from the Capitol in the midst of an attack on the Capitol. So it seems like some shady shit. I assume like the FBI probably knows a lot more about that than they're making public. And I saw something, and I'm just, this is hearsay. Don't take this verbatim, grain of salt here. I saw something, where the FBI potentially tracked a vehicle that was leaving the area at the time that might have been the vehicle that the bomber took. So, at the very least, I'm assuming that it wasn't this individual's car, but maybe they have a lead that could eventually turn up. I don't know, a potential suspect. I don't know. Anyway, moving on. That's a reckless speculation there. So also, we got news today that Ken Buck, the Republican from Colorado's 4th district. Yeah. So he announced his resignation, which is, in practice effectively immediately, which will leave the GOP House majority at 218 Republicans to 213 Democrats. And there's also rumors that as many as 5 House Republicans could resign in the coming weeks. Ty, these motherfuckers could lose the House before we even get to the election.
I was just thinking that, and I was like, how sweet would it be if Hakeem Jeffries gets that gavel?
Speaker of the House, baby. First black speaker of the House. It's about to happen.
That would be so, so dope. Ken Buck, he was out of all the fucks. He got...
Hey, it's wild, because, I don't know what you know Ken Buck from. I really just only know him as one of them Tea Party dudes that was out there basically trying to tank Obama's administration. And the fact that Ken Buck is like, hey, this shit is out of control. Like, what is going on with the Republican Party? I can't take this shit no more. It is Breaking Bad, yo. Like,
Yeah.
like whatever is going on behind the scenes in the house it has to be worse than we could ever have imagined.
Oh, well, it is, because I read something today where he was talking about, it was an article, I don't know if it was Newsweek, where he was saying that, the Republican retreat that they do.
Ain't nobody going.
That,
They ain't no retreat. They're retreating from each other.
oh my God. He was like, because they hate each other.
It's total
I was like,
total
that
dysfunction.
is fucking bad. Did you hear Boebert whining that
Oh man, it's tough.
that it was rigged?
Well, okay,
He
so
said the Uniparty forced him to, he was in collusion with the Uniparty to
All right.
prevent her, because she's ahead, according to Lauren, 25 points. Bitch is in 5th place.
all right, so here's the hang up for Boebert, right? So Buck represents the 4th district of Colorado, and she's currently in the seat that represents the 3rd district of Colorado. But for the November election, she's running for the seat that Ken Buck just left, right? So, because she was afraid of Frisch. And then because that seat has been vacated, there's going to be a special election in 3 months. I think it's in June, for that particular seat to fill Buck's spot now that he's left. But if Boebert wants to run for that seat in the special election, she has to resign from her current seat, which would create, it would create another opening, right? So then your House majority would be even thinner. But, if she doesn't resign and run in the special election, she'll have to wait until November, but she could be potentially running against a Democratic incumbent, making the job all that much harder. So yeah, she's between a rock and a hard place.
I love this for her.
Well, yes, and you got to hand it to her. So yeah, yeah. I'm sorry. I had a good one on Twitter after the State of the Union address, because they showed a picture of Lauren Boebert leaving the House chambers, and I was like, oh, there she goes, off the Five Guys, not the restaurant. No, look, and it's in jest. Like we don't really slut shame on this podcast, but we do like to kind of point out the hypocrisy. Anyway, so yeah, if she does resign to run in the special election, that's going to basically leave Republicans with one seat, one vote, basically, to keep MAGA Moses in power as the Speaker of the House. Like they could potentially lose. They could legit, we're not kidding here. They could legitimately lose control of the House before the election.
They say as many as 5 maybe following suit.
Yeah, there might be up to 5 more Republicans leaving the House soon, given this calamity that is the Republican Party, which would absolutely, we're just a few months away from an election. And if people are quitting from one party, that bodes poorly for that party. So that's another sign that what we're telling you about Trump's chances, it's legit. He is an extremely weak candidate, and it bears out in the numbers. And just people are quitting. They just we don't want none of these problems. All right. So moving on here. After having Lara Trump installed as the RNC co-chair, the RNC cleans house. That is the Republican National Committee, in case you're somehow unaware, firing approximately 90 staffers and moving their operations to Palm Beach, Florida, unofficially becoming an arm of the Trump campaign. Ty, the RNC is dead.
They are dead. Doorknob. It's not even the RNC anymore. It's the TNC.
No, it's the RNC. But when Trump goes to prison, it'll be the Republican National Commissary.
That shit is wild. And
they'll be taking their donations to send Trump some noodles.
How fucking Laura even bitch stole from dogs. Like,
oh man, and they stole from them cancer kids.
and she stole a song. Stole from dogs. Like, okay. But I guess somebody got to work since Eric gonna be unemployed the next 2 years.
Well, who's gonna work? They just fired everybody, Ty. They ain't got nobody.
No, well, I said somebody got to make the money. Her, because she gonna be the breadwinner now. Because Eric was the head of the president of Trump organization, and he can't do business for 2 years. What the hell else is Gums gonna do?
Well, it's entirely possible that that's why they moved to Florida, so they could get the rest of the family involved in cooking the books the same way they did for the Trump organization.
I'm sure, you know what, that makes a lot of sense. Junior.
Oh yeah, that's a podcast exclusive. I was saving that one for the podcast. I haven't talked about that on Twitter. Nobody else has either. So if you see somebody bring that up online, they got it here first. But yeah, so obviously up until 2024, Ronna McDaniel was the best thing that ever happened to the DNC. She was responsible for Trump losing in 2020, Republicans losing the Senate in 2020, barely winning the House back, super underperforming in 2022 and losing all these special elections ever since. And the only person who could potentially be worse at running the RNC than Ronna Romney is Lara Trump. I mean, maybe Don Jr., but like you said, in New York, motherfucker is barred from doing business. So as much as Ronna sucks, one of the things she's quite useful for, and you might notice that the Republican Party is having a lot of trouble with this here lately, is fundraising. Like, she knows all the fucking rich people and how to schmooze. She's one of them. She's like the female Kevin McCarthy. She might be a fucking moron in most areas of life and politics and business. Well, but
her grandfather was rich and a politician. So I mean, she knows what she's doing.
She is, in a very narrow sense, she has a level of expertise in like this one thing, like fundraising. Like the same way, like you see all of these videos of Trump being a moron, but like you got to admit, like one thing he's extraordinarily talented at is lying and grifting, right? So she's got this skill set that was particularly useful, at least for this one thing at the RNC. And now even that's gone. And like, not only is it gone, like, people aren't stupid. Like, once you put Lara Trump in charge, everybody knows what the game is. Like, it's a fucking grift. You just like funneling. It's a money laundering operation at this point. You're going to take the donations and funnel them straight to Trump. And wealthy people aren't going to give their money. And small dollar donors ain't going to get their money to the RNC either, because they know it's shiesty. It's shiesty.
Almost. I mean, what is it? A week ago, she was selling recycled dogs for like $10,000 at Mar-a-Lago, and like for $10,000.
Yeah, she has no idea what she's doing, and now the RNC is dead. And like the RNC, like I look. If you think about what a party's national committee does, like fundraising is one aspect of it, but distributing that money to the most vulnerable places or the most competitive races and state and federal elections all across the country in places that they really need to win to maintain power. Like that's like the main function of the party. You can't do that with nobody working there and nobody to raise no money. Like, you've effectively abandoned every single candidate across the nation to bring in, a money laundering operation for Trump org. So like, whatever dire circumstances the Republican Party might have been facing in November, like they just got even worse and exponentially worse. I can't even really explain to you how bad it is, because, it's going to take me a couple of weeks to just like sort out all the firings and who they're replacing them with. Like, what Trump is doing to the RNC is what he did to the federal government when he was in charge. He hollowed it out and installed a bunch of fucking morons. And that's why by the time the end of his administration rolled around, the country was falling apart. But yeah, couldn't happen to a better party. Good luck, bitches. They're going to have a rough year, and I'm excited for them. But one other side note here. So Christina Bobb, she was a prominent election denier who also served on the Trump campaign's legal team. You might also be familiar with her from her work from her work in the classified documents case down in Mar-a-Lago. And, you know, this is a podcast who has regularly confused her with Alina Habba for various reasons. She will now serve as the Republican National Committee's senior counsel for election integrity. Yay. All right. So I think the way I would describe Alina Habba at this point versus Christina Bobb is Alina Habba is like, she's like the wish.com version of young Melania. Is that fair?
Yeah.
She kind of looks like Melania. And then Christina Bobb kind of looks like, actually, I don't know. She looks
Christina
less.
Bobb is, I don't know, that she's just so strange.
Yeah.
I think she's strange. She acts strange. There's just something.
Yes, but I was just like appearance wise, she looks less European. And that's how you differentiate the two.
That is true.
But like specifically where you might know her from is she was so bad at her job that she got Trump's other lawyer in the case. Was it Chris Kise? No,
that's what I was just, that name. That's what came to my head too. No, it wasn't Chris Kise. Was it Evan Corcoran?
Yeah, she was so bad at her job that she got Evan Corcoran, crime fraud accepted, and turned him into a witness against Trump, and then left Trump with his only legal representation going forth after that was.
And that's why her ass is back on the news.
Yeah, Alina Habba, who specializes in representing parking garages. So yeah, put that person in charge of the RNC, and they're definitely going to get indicted for committing some kind of financial crimes. There's a whole litany of potential, illegal campaign activity that they could be involved in, and Christina Bobb is going to make sure they all go to prison for it.
I wonder how Kimberly Guilfoyle feels about this. I mean, she is a licensed attorney. I mean, she was an ADA, and she was in charge of like their fundraising and stuff for the campaign. Yeah. So they went with the other daughter-in-law over her. I wonder if she's a little saltine.
It's going to be rough for the RNC, and it couldn't happen at a better time for the Democratic Party. Yeah, I
love this for them.
Yeah, so she's absolutely going to be involved in doing Trump's hatchet work, and I don't know, who knows? Like, we'll never really know the extent of the fuckery that they're getting up to, but all of our worst fears, like foreign governments pumping in money into the RNC of the Trump campaign. Maybe Trump's not willing to do it himself with his own campaign because he could be personally liable for that. But I'm definitely sure he has no problems getting, Russia and China and the Saudis to send money to the RNC, where he has a level of plausible deniability of being personally connected with that, and engaging in a number of potential crimes, getting other people arrested. It's eventually all going to blow up in his face. Just trust me on that. All right, Ty. So we got our Shithole of the Week award nominee. There's a lot of competition out there, but of course, like, I decided in advance that there's no other bigger shithole of the week this week than one Sean King. You might be familiar with his work from grifting off of the Black Lives Matter movement, and noted fraudster in a number of various avenues here. So if you're unaware of Sean King's most recent endeavor, so earlier this week, he announced that he was converting to Islam. And then immediately afterward, he announced he was going on some kind of like speaking tour, charging, up to hundreds of dollars for tickets to these events, supposedly raising money to send to Gaza. Yeah, he's one of them. Not that
talk about when he freed the hostages.
Yeah, he was personally involved behind the scenes of getting Hamas to release the hostages, according to his Instagram post. He is one of them. And I'm not saying the Palestinians don't deserve money. I'm just saying that the money he's raising, they will never see a penny of, because that's the kind.
Just like Haiti, when he stole that like $2 million after they had that big earthquake.
Yeah. Didn't he do the same thing to Puerto Rico? I just like, I can't with him. He just, and then like another thing is you might be like, oh, the Black Lives Matter movement, right? He's black, isn't he? Well, about that. So he's one of them Rachel Dolezals. And if you don't know who that is, she is most famous for having an OnlyFans account, for which it appears to have cost her job at a university that she was teaching at. Okay, that's not actually what she's known for. She's known for pretending to be black. But like
she was head of the NAACP.
Yeah. She was one of them.
That's how strongly committed she was.
Yeah, to the grift. And then Sean King is a similar level of committed, because not only does he pretend to be black, like at this point he's pretending to be Muslim. My thing was like, well, if something horrific happens to Israel next, then he'll convert to Judaism, and then he'll be off to the next grift. But in honor of Sean King receiving the Shithole of the Week award, I would also, and also his, involvement in negotiating the release of hostages. I just like to point out that he goes by a number of aliases: Crooker T. Washington, Martin Luther Cream Jr., W.E.B. Defraud, Snow J. Simpson, Alexander Scamilton, Scamuel Jackson, Richard Dolezal, Talcum X, Neil deGrasse Whiteson, White Powder. He's also a superhero, in case you were wondering. He's the White Powder Ranger. Honky Kong, Mayo Angelou, Nelson Mandela, Milk Chamberlain, Albino Sharpton, Thurgood Marshmallow. Again, he's also involved in he's a superhero in
Stevie Wonder.
Oh, it's on there. Stevie Wonder. He's also a superhero in the MCU, T'Chaka the Whack Panther. He also goes by Medgar Nevers, and my favorite, Martin Luther Keyboard Jr. And with that, we award you, Sean King, with the Shithole of the Week award. Why don't you go over there to Gaza? You hang out with the Palestinians, maybe bring them some sandwiches or something. I don't know, catch one of them bombs or do something productive with your time. So before we get out of here, Ty, you got any closing thoughts?
No, I was talking about Elon. I really, really feel he is more and more and more of a security threat, and just tying that in to, I feel like he's a bigger threat than TikTok. I think that him and his platform is a complete, especially coming up into the election.
Hey, did you steal my closing thoughts?
No, did I get in your head?
I don't know, maybe. But no, continue.
But he, the incredible power that he has with the Starlink it's too much. Too much is at risk, not just, for Ukraine, but all over the world. And we must not forget that we have hundreds of thousands of soldiers abroad in these places. So technically we don't have troops on the ground in Ukraine, but yes. Well, no, not on the ground, but I mean like at military bases. like that are stationed overseas.
Oh yeah, well yeah, Ukraine's next to all of our NATO allies, and we definitely got dudes on bases over there. So
exactly, yes. And so we can't. Instead of looking at it like, oh, we don't care if he invades Poland or Germany or this place or that place.
Baby, we almost got Article 5 the other day when one of them bombs almost hit the Prime Minister of Greece, wasn't it? So
really?
Yeah. I think it landed like 100 yards away.
I know they've already had, stuff happen with Poland when that rogue, quote unquote, rogue rocket landed. I mean, it didn't destroy anything or hurt anybody, but still, Putin is testing, and Elon is over here on X-Chan commenting on Russian propagandists and, on their posts and stuff, and the things that he says about this administration. Motherfucker, you weren't even born here. This is you. He is a threat. It is easy to clown him because he is a clown, but at the same time, he needs to be taken more seriously right now. It's easy to dismiss him as stupid because he's talking to catered, but he really is in a position to do real lasting damage.
You know what? Your closing thoughts overlaps with mine so much that I'm gonna just let you have it, and I will end on this. Man, he gives African Americans a bad name. Oh my God. And that concludes this episode of Part of the Insurrection.